Who the hell is Kamala Harris? It's a lot of question. A lot of people have that question all across the country. Still, at this date, really no idea who she is, what she believes in, what she stands for, and what she would do as president of the United States. Overcoming that lack of understanding about her is her big challenge right now in these final days. But my next guest has actually done the homework. He's dug into her life and found out quite a bit about her upbringing, who she is, and what and how that made her who she is now. And that's Charlie Spiering, the author of the book Amateur Hour, Kamala Harris in the White House. He's also a political reporter for the Daily Mail. Charlie, great to have you with us, sir.
Hey, Vince, good to be back.
It's so nice to have you here. First of all, I love that you wrote this book. I love that you dug in to Kamala Harris, and there's a bunch of things that I want to know more about. Last night, Kamala Harris was talking during that CNN town hall, and she was claiming that she is and always has been some sort of prayerful Christian. In fact, take a listen to this. This is her claim yesterday.
Do you pray every day?
I do pray every day. I do pray every day, sometimes twice a day.
She prays every day, sometimes twice a day. Charlie, what is Kamala Harris's religious background?
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I can certainly understand why she's praying a little more these days as the election comes down to the wire. But when she grew up and during her first political race in San Francisco, she talked about how she used to grow up in the Hindu temple and sort of was inspired by the various goddesses in the Hindu temple and the Hindu mythology. And she would talk about, in front of certain audiences, she would talk about how she was inspired by these goddesses to run for office as citing the goddess Parvati and Kali as inspiration, these vengeful warrior goddesses that are depicted as very violent and very aggressive characters that she kind of wanted to imitate. Someone who's both caring about other people but also willing to fight for justice.
So when she was running for office in an earlier phase of her life, she would talk about the inspiration she drew from Hindu goddesses. That was the way she presented herself?
That's right. So there's still a pretty big, Indian community in San Francisco, and so she would talk about this as she hits the trail. For her first race, her district attorney's race in San Francisco, Also her mother would talk about how her, she raised Kamala Harris up in the Hindu temple in the area and did all the practices and was very religious. And so that was another aspect. When they were talking to Hindus and talking to Indian media, this was typically the line that they set upon.
So as you mentioned, her mother's Indian, her mother's Hindu, but she did she also go to a Christian church as a child?
Well, that's right. This is when Kamala Harris introduces her second mother, which she's brought up on the campaign trail a lot of times. This second mother was a family friend who ran a daycare center right in the same area as the Harris family. She was raised in a single mother home, raised by a single mother, and sort of she refers to her second mother, and this is the Regina Shelton. And this is a woman who has a strong connection to the Black South, who Kamala says would take her to a Christian church to sing in the choir and experience the whole culture of the Black church. So when she's in front of, like a Black Christian audience, she'll talk about her day singing in the choir and listening to Christian scripture.
Yes. So when she's on CNN last night, why didn't she talk about her Hindu influences? Why didn't that come up at all, in your estimation?
Well, a lot of people haven't talked about it. You only see glancing references there was an article in the New York Times about 3 days ago with a glancing, reference to her time in the Hindu temple, but they really focus, as Kamala Harris now focuses on, her experience in the Black church, and that's sort of her emphasis now as she's trying to win over the Black vote.
Interesting. Okay, so Tell me about. Can you talk a little bit about the ways that Kamala Harris, entered into the world of politics? A lot of people are aware that she really became a consequential figure in California politics due to the patronage of Willie Brown. Willie Brown put her in that position. She was dating him, and as a result, was given access to the power centers of Democrat politics in the state. But it sounds to me, based on your reporting, that she became enriched by that very quickly, that it wasn't some sort of hard scrabble upbringing, that in fact, she was making a lot of money very fast.
Right. Consider, you're just out of college. You're working as a county prosecutor in Alameda County, not even in San Francisco. You don't really have much of a position of influence. You're driving a Toyota Corolla, and you're living in a small apartment. But all of a sudden, you run into Willie Brown, and then when you start dating him, she's 30 at the time. She's 29 at the time that he is 60, and they start dating right at the time that he's running for mayor. So with Kamala Harris on his arm, Willie Brown sort of whips her around to the top parties, the socialites, all the big names, all the big donors, all the people in Democratic politics. And he also gives her a position, 2 state board positions that pay pretty handsomely for only having to meet once or twice a month. So she's made, over a period of a couple of years, she made $400,000, which you look back in the 90s, that's almost $1 million in today's money.
So right out of college, she was making hundreds of thousands of dollars instantly because of her relationship with Willie Brown?
That's right. So Brown really gave typically these kind of positions are given to political patrons or wealthy donors. But in this case, Willie Brown's sort of the outgoing speaker of the California state legislature. So he puts his known girlfriend at the time, and the papers noted at the time, that Willie Brown has put his girlfriend on this board position. It's certainly some of the newspapers sort of raised their eyes at the situation, yes, but nobody ever tried to block it or stop it.
Is this before she dated Montel or after?
This is before. Montel, I believe, was much later.
Montel, yeah, she dated Montel Williams too. Okay, so how much of her career has looked like that, where she's got some sort of elder party power holder who's giving her all the advantages in the world?
Well, it certainly kicked off her career. And so once she reached this position of power, when she's running for office, for political office herself, Willie Brown's kind of headed out the door as the outgoing mayor of San Francisco. That's when she kind of throws him under the bus and says, Willie Brown no longer matters. Hello, he's over. His political future is over. It's Kamala Harris time now, and really sort of campaigns against this idea that somehow she owes Willie Brown anything or even cares about his future. So you really kind of see this pivot from Kamala Harris, where she sort of, once she has her ins with the donors and high society of San Francisco, that's when she really just buckles down and creates sort of the myth of Kamala Harris that so many people in California are familiar with.
Yeah, actually, now that you bring up sort of these California rich people and their relationship with Kamala Harris, I was just talking in the first half hour about her relationship with Lauren Powell Jobs, who is the owner of The Atlantic, who is well documented as a massive backer of Kamala Harris for now, I guess, decades. What do you know, if anything, about that relationship?
Yeah, it's a pretty close relationship. Lauren Powell Jobs has always wanted Kamala Harris to succeed. She's part of sort of this blend between big tech and sort of the wealthy heirs of California power. You have a lot of new money from the big tech Silicon Valley people, and you also have a lot of old money who are inheritors to vast fortunes like the Gettys. So these are sort of the people that are funding and backing Kamala Harris. On top of that, you still have all the celebrities and a whole lot of California leftist activists out there. We're all pulling for her when she was sort of running for office in California.
Yes.
And as she soon discovered, politics nationally is much different.
Does she have any ideological through lines that you can tell? Is there anything? I mean, she's clearly indulged in sort of the far left elements of her party. Her 2019 run was really an expression of all of that. She's having trouble getting away from all of her publicly declared positions on that subject. She's running a campaign now that's full of vagaries and sort of cheap promises. But you can even tell that lefty interest groups don't believe her. You've noticed that all the environmental groups have gone quiet because they're just waiting for her to get power so that they can advance their agenda. What do you make of her ideology? What have you learned about it?
Well, that's right. In 2019, she went so far left that she positioned herself to the left of Bernie Sanders, which is really hard to do. In fact, she did it so fast and so furious that a lot of but people on the left really didn't see it as very authentic, even though she was out there in every single town hall, every single political forum, every single debate, trying to take these hardcore leftist positions. She really found herself struggling when it came time to explain those positions. And that's what now we're seeing a very similar thing now. She's trying to pivot hard towards the center without expressing her change of mind on these positions. She tries to dodge the whole flip-flopping attack and go for just, well, I still have the same values, I just don't necessarily support the same policies. That doesn't hold up to the smell test. We know one thing that she truly believes in, which she hasn't changed throughout her career, is her support of abortion with no concessions, no limits.
No, in fact, that position seems like it's become more hardened and more extreme.
That's right. She's always been willing to go extremely far on abortion. At one point, she even proposed allowing the Justice Department to sue and block any state laws that somehow inhibited the sort of her belief that women have the right to kill their baby from the moment of conception until the moment of birth. And I think that's where she's pretty comfortable with. You noticed in her interview with Hallie Jackson, she didn't concede that there should be any concessions on abortion. And that's sort of where her final opinion lies.
Finally, Charlie, did you learn anything in your research and your writing of this book about Kamala Harris, just about her own sense of self? Because when I see her or listen to her, the thing I pick up is insecurity. It seems that she's in some sense imperious, where she really does want to exert her power over everyone around her. But at the same time, she seems immensely insecure, like she doesn't know how to survive the questions she's being asked. What have you learned about her personality?
Well, it's very interesting. We saw a little bit of that last night in the CNN town hall. She wants to be perfect, right? But she's not. But she's not necessarily ready to do the work. She's done a very good job of becoming more scripted in this last year. This last election year, where typically she sort of would spiral into these awkward word salads. She's typically been a lot more scripted, but the town hall format does not help her. And when she's trying to be authentic, it's a question of, is she trying to be authentic? If so, she's coming off as authentic, someone who doesn't want to take a position on anything, is afraid to say anything without, because she's afraid of the political consequences. So you really see a lot of that going on and just a lot of insecurity. And she doesn't necessarily, when in doubt, just keep talking and adding more dependent clauses to your phrases and hoping you can run out the clock. That's kind of her strategy for getting through these things.
It sure seems like it. And I do have one more question. How does she treat the people who work for her? We've seen a lot of claims of massive turnover in her offices. What do people who once worked for her say?
Right. Well, she entered Washington with sort of the most politically diverse and expert staff that she was boasting about. But one by one, these people are leaving. And when they left, they talked about how much of a bully she was, how she mistreated staff. She was constantly cursing at them behind the scenes, blaming them for her problems, perceived slights all the time, even sort of getting down to criticizing them if they handed her the wrong kind of pen. So she was a very demanding boss, which, we're typically used to. People in Washington who listen to your show are used to these sort of, self-aggrandizing, narcissistic bosses. But at the same time, she was not very good at it. And staff would prepare her for these moments, and then she would not do the homework and fail, and then turn around and blame her staff. That was kind of the conversations that go on in Washington. Certainly now she has a pretty good staff who is committed to Kamala Harris. And we all know when you're running for president, everybody wants a piece of it. And so she's going to be just fine keeping a decent amount of staff at her side.
All right. Charlie Spiering, political reporter for the Daily Mail, author of Amateur Hour, Kamala Harris in the White House. Sir, thank you very much for joining us today.